Welcome to another episode of Beer Thunder. I'm Squishface and I've got about 25 minutes to waste, and I figured I would do a follow-up video on my previous one because I like to do videos in sets and, stay on topic instead of trying to bounce from one thing to the other. And now I can include my wonderful, very exciting, fun Denmark top-tier gameplay in the original baby plane, the JAS 39 Gripen. Now, much like a lot of my other top tier videos, this one's not going to really be about gameplay or how to play the JAS 39 Gripen, because all top tier gameplay over the past year and a half is more or less coalesced around it kind of being identical. I play every single plane almost exactly the same way. I can exchange the Gripen with the Su-27, with the Su-30, with the F-18, with the F-15C, with the F-15E, with the F-4F ICE, and it's going to be a lot of the same things just repeated over and over again. You fly in, you go up, you shoot your missiles as close as you can reasonably get them, you notch the missiles coming in, or you multipath them, and all top-tier gameplay ends up being very repetitive, and it ends up looking very, very similar. There's not really a lot of nuance to what is going on, and as things have changed, as flight models have become progressively more and more arcadish, is what I would call it, especially with the addition of Macobra button and the fact that AOA limits are kind of completely meaningless. It means that kind of even the dogfighting portion of top tier stuff, to me, it just really isn't all that interesting. With the power creep, with the introduction of the Rafale and the Typhoon, it means that if you're in those planes and you merge with something like an Su-27, the way that you win is kind of the same every time, same thing with the Gripen. And it also means with the addition of the Su-30, the way that it wins is kind of the same thing. It's forced to kind of like stand on its engines, do its twirly bird thing, and hope to get a missile off. And it's all just, to me, it's all just kind of miserable. It's all just, I just don't like it. And the more research I do about kind of like the minutia of it, like we sent the Femboy Intelligence Agency to an air show to talk to a Typhoon pilot about everything that they can disclose about the Typhoon. And what we found is the Typhoon pilot said, hey, what's the AOA limit? 24. You get 24. That's what you get. But in War Thunder, it's like 50 to 60, depending on how much elevation you pull on the stick, where you can get it to go above that. And your top tier dogfights between Rafale and Typhoon in Sim with manual controls is the goofiest fucking looking shit possible. Like, you'll end up like flying like sideways, rudder sliding. It's like you basically have almost quote unquote kind of like thrust vectoring. It's not real thrust vectoring, but it's basically 90% of the way there. And it's just kind of like it's just kind of to me it's not that I don't like it just because it's unrealistic. I just don't like it. It's just like, oh, this is fucking gimmicky as shit. And it also means with the spacing in a dogfight that you go straight for like a second and a half, and then you just pull as hard as you can, and you can kind of just like backflip the plane into the guy, and it just comes down to aim. And a lot of these kind of like even good top tier dogfights really come down to, oh, I was better at aiming while my plane was basically trying to throw itself out of the sky. This is a lot of fun. Like, if you want to get good at dogfighting now, like, just go practice aiming. Go practice aiming on full manual controls. That's pretty much all there is. Really all there is to it at this point. And when it comes to the missile stuff is kind of the same. It's you shoot your missile, you notch, you reshoot your missile, you notch, and if you actually get good at it, it's just fucking foreplay before you get to a dogfight anyways, and then you're kind of in the same boat where you both look at each other's planes and go, oh, that's one of the Doritos, I'm boned, or oh, it's a F-16, I'm just gonna shoot missiles until he's out of countermeasures, because some of our previous like really, really good planes have aged somewhat badly. Like the F-16C, I think, has probably gotten the real short end of the stick, because like it just doesn't have a lot of countermeasures, it doesn't have a lot of like endurance. Its flight model is good in comparison to like the Su-27 when it was first released, but currently the Su-27 flight model is better. The Su-30 flight model is technically worse because it's just a really, really fat Su-27 with thrust vectoring thrown on it. But in practice, it really just doesn't matter. Same thing with like the multipathing debate. just doesn't matter because everyone is playing on predominantly flat maps. Because as it turns out, there's a huge gulf between what people say that they want, the kind of gameplay they envision themselves enjoying, and what they actually want to play or what they actually choose to play. People pick these small flat maps because multipathing and getting rid of the radar missiles is more reliable. That's really all there is to it. Yes, I know the argument ends up being sometimes that, oh, well, no, it's actually because of the naval targets. Have you ever played a map on Denmark where more than like 10 boats get destroyed? Because I don't think that I have, to be honest. I don't see a lot of people going for boats. The thing about Denmark is the bomb points are nice and close. You can get to the objectives really quickly. The color palette is not completely abysmal, and the map is basically flat most of the way. You can play it like it's a smaller version of Tunisia if you just concentrate yourself on the right side, and it's fucking brain rot. It's brain rot. And what the player statistics reveal about kind of like the decline of Sim is not that Sim is declining and Sim's going to die in X amount of days. What it kind of reveals is that I don't think gameplay actually matters. I don't think players really care about gameplay. And what I mean by this is, hypothetically speaking, if you're a Gaijin, if you're looking at the game from a input versus output perspective, from the point of like making money, what do you think's going to do better? Imagine if in 6 months we get a new update, and this new update can either be A, it will fix every single bug in the game, give battle rating decompression, make minor quality of life changes where the game doesn't crash when you alt tab, the menus get better, you get like just a big quality of life update. Do you think that's going to make money? Or alternatively, in 6 months we get, hear me out, a premium YF-23. Which one's going to do better? And I'll tell you straight up, the premium YF-23 is going to fucking sell like gangbusters. It's going to just be, people will fucking open their wallet immediately for that kind of thing. And that's kind of what the statistics reveal too, is that the only part of the game that didn't see like a major decline in the past like 3 months was Russian top tier, which basically, yes, it declined. It went down by like 7% total, but it didn't really decline. The American stuff declined. The European stuff declined. Everything else across the board declined. And I bet you, I'd be willing to bet money that if we went back and were able to get the statistics from the past, that the last time the game saw like a major jump in player population for Sim is when they changed multipathing and added Fox 3s. Like those first 2 weeks after that massive amount of power creep were probably the most active time for top tier Sim until the meta established, until people quote unquote got good and kind of went back to the things that they were more comfortable with, the things that it turns out that they actually wanted to do, because a lot of people don't like getting nuked from outer space with new missiles, or feeling like the missiles that are coming at them don't really allow counterplay, because the argument is, well, the maps are too small, the player density is too high, yada, 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 yada. It doesn't matter. People went back to the thing that they were comfortable with and kind of doubled down and tripled down on it. At the same time, the people that thought these the new changes were going to make them better at the game, they kind of got superseded by people that just wanted to play the game more. And because of that level of like player skill difference, you don't really see a lot of teams where it's like skilled players on each team going at it. You see more games that are one team is stomping the other team, and then you go down one more game and it's just the same situation but flipped, where instead of making 2 games that are competitive, you make 4 games and all of them are non-competitive. So I'm not super optimistic about the future. Now, with that being said, I do think that we're going to see some recovery in Sim, because we do have this tendency to all come back for like, okay, new build event played. We got the Indian thingamajig that was teased that we're building right now, and the game is active during kind of like peak player hours. For the most part, it's not as good as it used to be, but it's still there. We'll get like a little bump, and then that'll get us to our next update. And our next update's going to be not great, at least from an aerial perspective, because it looks like we're going to get the F2, which is going to be basically Japanese, on par with maybe the Rafale or on par with maybe the Eurofighter, depending on how the radar is. And it's a minor nation. And there'll be a bunch of people that come back and they grind to it and they'll like play it a little bit. And then we're all going to be back on Denmark, and it's going to be irrelevant. It's going to go exactly the same. Where, cool, we got a new flight model that's going to be maybe like a halfway between an F-16 and an F-18. And after 2 months, nobody's going to give a shit. At the same time, we're going to get IRIS-T, SAMs, so ground's going to change a little bit. And then it looks like they're going to add a bunch of battleships. They're going to add like the Yamato and the Bismarck and the fucking the Vanguard or whatever. It's going to, they're basically, Gaijin has kind of like looked at naval, I think, and realized that the hype is the selling point. So how do you hype up naval, a mode that is probably even worse and more dead than Sim? Well, you just kind of skip to the end and like release the hype beast ships. You get the Yamato and be like, okay, we're gonna do this. It's like nobody's gonna play that after like the first 2 months because it's just gonna be busted, and they're gonna realize like, hey, World of Warships is a better game for the ship thing. So I'm not super optimistic about that. The update after this next update, though, is going to be interesting to see, because adding new power creep, adding new features, shuffling the meta again means that a bunch of people come back like, okay, finally the game's more realistic. I can finally live my DCS fantasies because I've been consuming all this media where I'm like, I've imagined myself going in and doing good because I understand modern combat and how to like shuffle the balance between active radar missiles and then medium range IR missiles and then short-range IR missiles. And it's like, we're probably going to get a new generation of infrared missiles. And they're going to be the imaging infrared, the ones that are supposed to be technically undodgeable, unnotchable, unflareable, impossible to defeat, mutually assured destruction, etc., etc. Depending on how they're implemented, we'll see what happens. But it will bring people back. It will bring a new wave of people in, where they'll be like, finally, the Eurofighter is playable. The Eurofighter no longer suffers because we got 16 ass rammers and we can just turn IRIS-T on and whatever. It's basically like having like a bunch of like R-27 ETs or whatever. It could be like that. And after probably about 2 months, the meta is going to establish again. Russia will get stomped into oblivion, or the R-74M will be like the best missile in the game for fucking reasons that nobody understands, where blue side teams will get stomped into oblivion, or it'll be balanced, or the meta will develop, and people will go back to what they're comfortable with. People will go and do something else, because Sim itself is not going to get a lot of development. We haven't got a new map in ages. They did update Sinai. They did update Sinai. Let's give them credit for updating Sinai, where they added a bunch of fucking rocks all over the place that lagged the fuck out of the game. So Sinai runs like abysmal dog shit on a lot of people's computers now, which is cool. I love just playing the game and just fucking rubber banding all over the place. And we'll get, but anyways, kind of skipping back that we'll get some new power creep. We'll get some new bullshit in the game. People will come back and be like, oh wow, this is fun, and then they'll be like, oh wow, someone's actually better at the game than I am. And adding all of this complexity to it is really just going to make it so that people that are already kind of experienced, that have already know life the game like I have, are going to have a leg up. We'll show people how to do things, and we're going to end up back in the same boat. Because I think one of the fundamental problems with Sim, and kind of the Sim player base, and kind of War Thunder at large, is that we can say that we like competitive games. We can say that we like fighting tooth and nail to have a balanced gameplay experience. But my experience is the opposite of that. My experience of kind of like looking at the names and looking at everything is that people want to have just enough fight that it feels like their kills were earned, that the performance meets their expectations. And I think one of the reasons that we've seen kind of like a decline in Sim is because the player base kind of collapses in on itself, because as the event ends, the zombies are going to go away, they're going to go to tanks, they're going to go do something else, and that means that the player pool has shrunk, where the average player is a little bit more experienced, which means that guys that were getting three kills per game, 4 kills per game, or 4 kills per death, whatever it is, are going to go down to 3. And if that doesn't meet their standards, if that doesn't really satisfy their ego, they're going to leave. They're going to go find something else. They're going to go keep skipping around to different BRs, different games, different planes, whatever makes them satisfied. And that means that because those players are gone, the level of experience goes up, and eventually we just kind of keep like culling ourselves until the game is completely dead. Now, is it going to be completely dead? No, because there's about 5 or 6 different iterations of slapping more power creep into the game that we will get like a revitalization of the meta just long enough that we'll open our wallets, buy more premium crap, buy the brand new plane on day 1 because we don't want to grind it, because we want to be winning right away, go to the forums, engage with it, and we'll be able to find just enough to be entertained. But that's really all that it is. It's entertainment. The entertainment comes from the dinging sound, all of the stupid gambling bullshit, all the flashy lights, all of the hate messages that you get for being like doing well. And what's not fun in the game is when you're doing badly, and a lot of people don't like doing badly. And the best way to not do badly in Sim is to just leave the game and go find a new one where you're always looking for players that are less experienced than you, or looking for teams that are not coordinated, or looking for situations where you're a little bit more preferred. Like, for instance, like a lot of people right now, they don't want to play against the Rafale because the Rafale is overpowered. It's busted. The missiles are too good. The flight model is too good. The radar's too good. The players that played are just try-hard sweats, etc., etc. And because they're doing that, like you get a couple of Rafales in the game, like people be like, I'm packing my shit up and I'm going over here, or I'm packing my shit up and I'm going to Denmark. So it's not really good. I don't really have a lot of optimism with the next coming updates, but I don't think the game dies out. As far as other tiers go, I think we just kind of like we saw kind of like a big slide, but I think we are at the bottom of that slide. We'll see like a little bit of a pickup and just kind of like an ebb and flow. And I think for the lower tiers, what's going to be really impactful is, number one, kind of like the way that community leaders engage, or sim community, like content creators. So it's kind of like basically Crab Nation, Wingling Dragon, those guys. They can keep the low tiers kind of going for the most part. And the other big thing to look out though for is, what is Aces of Thunder going to do to that player base? Because Aces of Thunder, for those who don't know, is this like VR porting version of War Thunder that's the same but different, that is basically centered around like World War II combat. And that has the potential to take a lot of the player base from Sim and transition it over to a game that other people are going to get involved in. And it's going to be interesting to see what they do, because with Aces of Thunder, because it looks like they're using flight models that are identical to War Thunder with no changes, you're going to see a lot of really interesting things of like how balancing works. Because if you go the pure historical battles route, where you have something like the P-63 versus the J2M2, one of those planes is very much better than the other in pretty much 4 out of like 5 major categories. The P-63 is not bad, but the J2M2 is just far and above, easier to fly, easier to use, more rewarding. The guns are better, and if they really double down on it and they bring back some of the old missions where back in the old days we had Wake Island for American props. It was probably the most garbage setup of any ARB map possible, because it was set up so that the American side would spawn on the runway on Wake Island, and they had to intercept an already airborne Japanese force and also juggle some AI targets. The AI targets were landing craft, and if the landing craft reached the island would get captured, the game would end, and Japan would win. American planes are not well suited for that like short range, quick reaction air interception mission. You're not going to take your P-38 or your P-47 off the runway and climb up above a J2M2 that is already air spawned. And looking at kind of Aces of Thunder, I think they might bring some of this stuff back, and it's going to be really interesting to see how this plays out and how the balancing issues of Aces of Thunder works out, and whether or not the balancing issues are going to supersede the gameplay issues. Because looking at the beta or the alpha footage, it looks like they're kind of going for the historical thing, but they're not being strictly historical, where America doesn't get the P-63 until a certain year, or the fact that America even gets to use the P-63 is something that's ahistorical. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with that. And the other thing is, like, Aces of Thunder seems to be catering to a more kind of like halfway between like people that want the aesthetics of a sim and kind of like some of the experience of a sim without going full into it. It's not really, doesn't seem to be intended to pull players away from AirSB, but because of the early access, because of who they're appealing to, like they gave Training Days like early access, so he's like hyping it up, giving reviews for it. They gave Greg's Airplanes a review thing or access to it, and he's like hyping it up. Where maybe we get like a World War II sim that's like actually like interesting. Maybe it kind of like kills off all of these lower tiers too. But I think with Aces of Thunder, we're gonna be. I'm prepared for disappointment with that, and I'm not really planning on getting the game. I'm not planning on switching from sim, but I do think once that game gets released, we will see probably a downwards trend in sim, and maybe it's better. But I also think that first month that Aces of Thunder is out is going to be really, really interesting. I think people are going to realize really quickly why the BRs are the way that they are, why War Thunder has developed the way that it has, because they might be retreading on a lot of those same issues. Where, hey, in theory, F4U-1 can fight on equal terms with a J2M2. In practice, with the amount of time that people are willing to dedicate to the game and willing to do kind of en masse, the J2M2 is just going to be better. The J2M2 is going to stomp the hell out of everything. And I think that's also going to be one of the things to look out for as we add newer and newer missiles, where you add greater degrees of complexity to it, where the amount of counterplay that you have, especially on kind of like these smaller maps, especially with like, we know how Afghanistan plays. We know exactly where to go on the Afghanistan map. We're like, okay, you go to the north, you sit below the mountains, you wait for the blue team to leave their spawns, and you shoot at them, and usually most people try to multipath through the middle. With the addition of Micah IR, Iris T, Ass Rammers, where you might find that, hey, our next meta is going to be, if you get close enough to merge, you guys just trade in kills, you both killed each other. Or by the time you get to a merge and you've had to prioritize taking flares over chaff now because that's how you have to defeat the IR missiles, you might actually find people quadruple down on the multipathing maps, because then you wouldn't have to take as much chaff, and then you could take more flares. We also might see maybe Gaijin is smart and they implement the new missiles, but they also implement new countermeasures where they can kind of like offset each other, where you might have some counterplay. But I mean, in all honesty, with the way the flight models are, slapping even more capable short-range missiles on these things it's going to make this shit Ace Combat. It's going to make this really, really arcadey. It's going to make it really, really, like, you're at least going to get to hear the target destroyed ding a lot quicker, but you're also probably going to lose a lot more money a lot faster, and you're probably, like, some people will enjoy it. Some people will adapt and enjoy it. I think a lot of people will be like, the newness will be there. A lot of people will enjoy it for about a month or two. The meta will be established again, and we're going to be in the same boat. So in probably a year from now, we'll be like, hey, the Iris T meta changed everything, and then they'll be in decline, and then they'll be like, okay, the F-22 is coming, and then fucking hype beast bullshit happens, and we're going to be in the same thing. We're on the sim fucking roller coaster, and that's my TED Talk. Thank you for attending.